Live from our 7 Tasmania studios, your nightly news with Kim Miller begins now.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. The Premier has unveiled his new cabinet following Sarah Courtenay's resignation last week. Member for Franklin Nick Street has been appointed to the ministry for the first time. Political reporter Ainsley Kosh joins us from outside Parliament House. Now Ainsley, were there any surprises in today's cabinet shake-up?
Not really, Kim. Nick Street was tipped as one of the main contenders to fill the vacancy left by former Liberal member for Bass, Sarah Courtenay. Now, she, of course, resigned after her controversial trip to Europe while serving as Education Minister in the lead-up to schools returning. Now, Nick Street's taken on the sport portfolio from Jane Howlett in addition to 3 new portfolios. The reshuffle comes just in time for the return of Parliament as the government awaits the results of a countback for the seat of Bass in the lead-up to March 1.
A gathering at Government House to mark a new ministry. The Premier's 9-member cabinet assembled, ready to serve in Parliament. The most notable addition is the member for Franklin, Nick Street, sweeping up 4 portfolios, including sport and recreation.
What I'll be interested in in the Sports Minister is increasing participation at the grassroots level and strengthening communities through sport.
The Premier retaining Treasury, Peter Gutwin, confident he can shift his focus away from COVID and onto other responsibilities.
I believe it's appropriate that I take on a greater load, and so I'll be taking back on the tourism portfolio as well as the climate change portfolio.
His appointment welcomed by the tourism sector.
When you're the Premier of the state and you pick up the phone about airlines, Alan Joyce takes your call or Tourism Australia takes your call, and we know time and again it's just this message that Tasmania takes tourism very seriously.
Roger Yench is now Minister for Education, Children and Youth following Sarah Courtenay's resignation. The union hopeful he will serve the role well.
I don't think he's going to have enough time to be able to stumble around at the start. We really need someone who can hit the ground running, especially with all our industrial agreements up for negotiation right now.
But his appointment has been shrouded in controversy after some opponents criticised his performance as Human Services Minister.
So we are deeply concerned that he is totally incapable of fulfilling those roles, absolutely the wrong person for the job, and has to be removed from the responsibility.
Some cabinet members will now hold up to 5 portfolios each. The opposition says that's proof there isn't enough capable members in the government to share the load.
There's no doubt that this government is bereft of talent, lacks depth, and instead of providing the stability that Tasmanians were promised, it's in disarray.
Liberal newcomer Madeleine Ogilvie missed out on a portfolio but is the government's nomination for Deputy Speaker. No doubt each minister has a big task ahead of them as they look towards Parliament in less than 2 weeks. Ainsley Kosh, 7 Tasmania News.
COVID case numbers have jumped again across Tasmania. 680 new infections were reported overnight, while 2 people remain in ICU. In good news, the state has hit a milestone in its booster rollout. More than 50% of Tasmanians aged 16 and over have received the 3rd dose. It comes as the Therapeutic Goods Administration has provisionally approved the Moderna vaccine for children aged 6 years and older. And former Hawthorn coach Alastair Clarkson has touched down in Tasmania to get the ball rolling on the state's AFL bid ahead of a crucial vote. He's meeting with the Premier tonight and tomorrow morning to nut out how Tasmania can gain a foothold in the national competition.
What I want to talk to him about is what he believes is the best way to ensure that, one, we can achieve our aspiration of an AFL licence, both men's and women's, but at the same time how we strengthen the base of football, how we strengthen participation in the state.
AFL presidents will decide whether to open the door to Tasmania in coming months. More than 18,000 litres of fuel has been recovered from 2 submerged tugboats at the port of Devonport after a cement carrier crashed last month. Salvors have determined 10,000 litres of hydrocarbons remain on board the Campbell Cove. Tasport says there is still a high risk of leaking if the structural integrity of the tugs worsens, with a salvage plan being worked out. A badly injured Tasmanian man who was moments from bleeding to death says he owes his life to a hero emergency worker. Gary Bevan was guided through critical first aid by a 000 dispatcher who is now being recognised globally.
The savage slashers are scarred, but Gary Bevan is still breathing after losing control of an angle grinder in his garden.
Tried to get something to stop the bleeding. That was unsuccessful. So I put my foot into a Coles carry bag that I had down the back and hobbled up 2 flights of stairs through the house to get my phone.
Is the blood spurting or pouring out?
Yes, pouring out.
Lewis Stadler was on the other end of the 000 call, guiding Gary's first aid.
I want you to place the cloth around your bleeding calf.
Staying nice and calm for the call is really imperative.
So you're going to keep twisting the stick as hard as you can.
He'll most probably say he was only doing his job. Yes, he was, but as far as I'm concerned, he did a bloody fantastic job.
How is the bleeding going now?
Yeah, I can't see anymore.
Good. Yeah, well done. That's perfect. You've done a great job. So that's worked really well.
Lewis's calm and considered response has earned him the Australasian Dispatcher of the Year award, recognition for what can be a faceless role.
Dispatchers are sort of backstage characters a lot of the time. We don't spend too much time in the limelight.
And this is just one case of many, many cases that happen every day in Tasmania that our professionals provide incredible care for.
Gary lost roughly 2 litres of blood during the ordeal, but when he finally meets his medical hero, his repayment will be measured in pints.
I'd like to buy him a beer. I don't know if he drinks, but what do you say to somebody who has saved your life? You say thank you, but it doesn't say much. Yeah, it's deep.
Tom Johnson, 7 Tasmanian News.
The newly renovated cabin for Defence veterans has officially opened in the Central Highlands. It's hoped a training centre can be built next door, allowing returned servicemen to receive mental health support as well as a much-needed holiday.
From dated bathrooms and rusted fixtures, this rundown fisheries shack has been transformed into a sanctuary for our returned servicemen and women.
They don't have a place, as I understand it, to go where they can spend some quality time with their mates or their family and their children. So a place like this, I think, is very, very important to their recovery, for their transition from military life into civilian life.
The Vietnam Veterans Association will soon welcome guests and their families from across Australia. Oliver Breeze served in East Timor and volunteered to help build the lakeside accommodation. He hopes it will help veterans struggling to return to civilian life.
Unfortunately, many veterans come home carrying the effects and the atrocities of war, and it takes a long time for some of these people to get over some of the atrocities they've seen. And this sort of environment will be a wonderful opportunity for them to come into a peaceful, relaxing, safe environment.
Plans are underway to build a new training facility here, which will allow veterans to stay at the accommodation and receive mental health support too. The construction didn't come without its challenges. The RSL pulled its support for the projects, delaying it by a year until state government funding was secured. But winter weather conditions certainly didn't make it easy for builders.
Out of, say, 10 or 12 days we worked in snow. The location was completely snowed out, but that didn't stop us from doing our best.
Time away from home that can change lives for the better. Elizabeth O'Neill, 7 Tasmania News.
A Chigwell man who allegedly avoided police after speeding on his motorcycle has had his bike seized and been charged with serious traffic offences. Police say the 32-year-old exceeded the limit by more than 120 kilometres an hour in Glenorchy late last week. 2 other bikes displaying false or stolen number plates were also involved in the incident. Anyone with information is urged to contact Crime Stoppers.
Some of the nation's best water polo players are flocking to Hobart for the Australian Championships this weekend. Tasmania is joining forces with South Australia, giving the state its best representation in the national competition in nearly 20 years.
Up to 10 hours a week in the water is common practice for these young athletes, priming their bodies for strong competition.
We're playing against Olympic players, which is a bit daunting, but it's really, really great, and it's the best experience we're going to get growing up.
For the first time since the early 2000s, Tasmania have put on the cap to make a combined state team with South Australia.
South Australia approached water polo legend from Hobart, John Whitehouse, and said, have you got any athletes that we could have a look at?
To make the official Adelaide-Hobart Jet squad.
We try and do as much training as the same as they do over there. Get there, have a team meeting, talk about all the structure and stuff, and then move into it.
I think it's a great thing. It's something I've aspired to do for a long time, to play at National League level.
They'll get the chance to showcase their talent in front of a home crowd, with a round of the Australian Water Polo League landing in Hobart on Saturday.
We're hoping that this event, will get the enthusiasm up and get more people either back into sport, or mums and dads go, well, that looks like a good sport, we'll get our child into that.
The women's team are putting in the extra effort at training, vying for their first win of the competition this weekend.
It's great that as a young player I've been given the opportunity to play in an Opens team at the best level we have in Australia.
The state body wants those opportunities to continue.
It's more about government organisations wanting to help grow the sport, not just so much with money, but making pool space available and not as expensive.
Grace Evans, 7 Tasmanian News.
The state's premier men's and women's soccer competitions have included an extra bye round in case COVID causes hassles once again. The NPL and Women's Super League seasons will kick off with Olympia hosting South Hobart in a double-header. Reigning men's champion Glenorchy Knights begin their campaign against last year's wooden spooner Riverside Olympic at KG5, while in the women's, Clarence Zebras will begin their title defence in the north against Launceston United. Games begin on March 18.
Good evening everyone. 25 in Hobart and Launceston today, and Burnie and Devonport both 23. Friendly Beaches, the state's top of 26 degrees, St Helens 25, 23 in Grove, Flinders Island and Low Head 22 and 19 in Strahan. Patchy cloud can be seen about the west of the state today, with mostly clear skies elsewhere. Across Australia, a frontal cloud band lies to the east of Tasmania and over southeast of Victoria, with low cloud over the southern coast of the mainland and high cloud about the northwest of Western Australia. Tomorrow's chart shows a cold front over the northeast of Tasmania, while a high lies south of Western Australia. Troughs lie over northern Australia and inland Queensland. West to northwesterly winds tomorrow, 30 to 40 knots about the south and lower east, and 20 to 30 knots elsewhere. Swells reaching 4 to 6 metres in the west and south. And there is a gale warning in place for the lower and southeast coasts and the south and central west coasts, and a strong wind warning for all remaining coastal waters and inshore lakes, the Derwent Estuary, Frederick Henry, Norfolk and Storm Bays and the Channel. 19 in Hobart and Campania tomorrow, showers, and 18 in Huonville. Launceston, partly cloudy and 22, Devonport and Georgetown both reaching 20. Partly cloudy and 20 in Burnie and Wynyard tomorrow, 19 degrees in Strahan. And in the east, 22 in St Helens, Swansea a top of 20, and a shower or two and 18 in Port Arthur. And the UV will be very high 9s across the state tomorrow, with sunrise expected at 6:37 a.m. On Saturday, fine and partly cloudy with light northwesterly winds. Showers about the west and far south on Sunday, fine elsewhere. And on Monday, showers continuing in the west and far south, easing during the afternoon. 38 in Perth tomorrow, cloudy in Melbourne and Adelaide, mostly sunny, and 30 in Canberra, 32 in Brisbane and Cairns, and 33 degrees in Darwin. And it's currently partly cloudy right across the state at the moment, with Hobart 22, Launceston 21 degrees and 19 in Devonport. And that's all in weather tonight, Kim.
Right. Thank you very much, Chelsea, and that's all your news for now. We'll be back later with updates. Thanks for joining us. Good night.